Hello, everybody. All right, we're gonna kind of get settled here. I know we're running a little bit late. Um, but we have a very exciting panel for you, or I think we have a very exciting panel full of subject matter experts. The panel is called Fair and Impartial Policing in Vermont, a Review. And here we have a number of extremely knowledgeable panelists. First of all, Dr. Tabitha Ann Moore is a nationally recognized equity strategist, researcher, and consultant with 3 decades of experience transforming public safety, education, and human service systems. As the founder and principal consultant of International Evolution, Intentional Evolution. I'm a little nervous, sorry. Intentional Evolution, she partners with law enforcement agencies, government entities, and communities to design and implement identity-responsive systems of support and accountability that operationalize fairness, transparency, and trust. A former probation officer, couple and family therapist, and school counselor, Dr. Moore's doctoral research in transformative social change at Saybrook University produced the framework for identity-based policing, a next-generation evolution of fair and impartial policing. She has since collaborated with the Vermont Police Academy and the Vermont Criminal Justice Council to translate this model into statewide policy and training standards, ensuring that the policing practices are identity conscious, trauma informed, and measurable. As the founding president of the Rutland area NAACP, Dr. Moore established one of Vermont's first branches, advancing statewide dialogue on racial justice and identity-based equity in public systems. Her leadership, recognized by the ACLU Curtis W. Hoff Civil Liberties Award, the NAACP Lifetime Achievement Award, and the City of Burlington Changemaker Award, continues to shape how institutions integrate justice, care, and accountability into their operational DNA. Dr. Moore's work bridges scholarship and practice, equipping law enforcement and public agencies nationwide to move beyond compliance towards identity conscious, trust-based governance rooted in structural integrity and community partnership. Also, part of our panel, we have Lisa Ryan. Lisa is a seasoned leader in equity and justice, currently serving as the Community Inclusion Director at the Vermont Criminal Justice Council, Vermont Police Academy. In this role, she oversees statewide fair and impartial policing initiatives, advances inclusive policy development, drives data-informed equity strategies, and fosters meaningful community engagement. Lisa brings over a decade of experience in restorative justice, diversity, equity and inclusion, mediation, conflict resolution, and systems transformation. She previously served as the inaugural Associate Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Vermont Law and Graduate School and held leadership roles including directors of domestic violence response systems at the Vermont Network and the Rutland County Community Justice Center. Deeply rooted in Vermont, Lisa served on the Rutland City Board of Aldermen and was the former first vice president and founding member of the Rutland area branch of the NAACP. Her leadership and impact have earned statewide recognition. She was named one of Vermont's rising stars by the Vermont Business Magazine in 2017 and voted Rutland Young Professionals of the Year in 2018. She holds a Master of Science in Mediation and Applied Conflict Studies from Champlain College and a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Temple University. Her work is grounded in a commitment to inclusive systems, collaborative leadership, and community-centered justice. Also, part of our panel today is Sergeant Daniel F. Bennett. I found out that there are, in fact, 3 Daniel Bennetts that work for the state of Vermont. So through emailing the wrong Dan Bennett, I have now learned all about that. So Dan here is, he's a humble person who didn't want to provide a bio ahead of time. So I had to interrogate him right before the panel. So Sergeant Bennett is from Springfield, Mass. Originally. He attended Westfield State, which is in Western Mass. He has a BS in science and biology. He's been with the state police in Vermont for 15 years. He's held a number of different positions with the state police. He was a detective trooper. He was promoted to BC, the Bureau of Criminal Investigation. He was then promoted to sergeant at the Office of Professional Development as the senior drill instructor. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a drill sergeant here who also cares about fair and impartial policing. So imagine that. He's also a recruiter, and he became the co-director of the Fair and Impartial Policing Committee, or
Fair and Impartial Policing Community Affairs.
Community Affairs. Thank you. And he told me that I asked him why do you want to do that, and he said that he wanted to make our agency better and to see the state police fully involved in communities. So thank you so much, Sergeant, for being here and for letting me butcher your bio. Okay. And then finally, sorry, I'm switching to my other device. Finally, you've already, I think a number of you were here for the first panel, but in case you weren't, we're going to hear from Jose Ignacio de la Cruz. And Jose is a member of Migrant Justice Coordinating Committee. He came to Vermont from Mexico to work on dairy farms, where he became a leader in the Milk with Dignity campaign to protect farm worker rights. After years working on dairies, Nacho became a worker owner of construction cooperative New Frameworks. He has been a principal leader in legislative and policy campaigns to expand protections for immigrant rights in Vermont. This June, Nacho and his stepdaughter were detained by Border Patrol while delivering food to a farm. They were held in detention for weeks before being released following a mass public campaign. And also here with us today is Will Lambeck, who is providing the translation and also from Migrant Justice. Will is a part of the staff team at the immigrant-led human rights organization, Migrant Justice. Originally from Montpelier, he's organized with immigrant communities in New England for the past 20 years. He is also a very humble person who didn't give me a very extensive bio, but I would like to welcome him and the rest of the panelists today. All right, so we're gonna have I have a number of questions here. We're gonna try to make this organic and flow. So if something jumps out at you, you know, we can have a Q&A while we're all kind of discussing. So this question I'm gonna pose to all the panelists, and hopefully we can just kind of go down the line. You know, Vermont is often cited as a national leader in fair and impartial policing, but what does that really mean? So, you mind kicking us off?
No. Lucky me.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be a leader in fair and impartial policing? First of all, is that okay, or do I need to eat the mic more? Are we good? Excellent. What does it mean to be a leader in fair and impartial policing? Well, I think one of the things that makes Vermont ahead of the game in a lot of respects is the fact that we attend to identity. A lot of times when people think of fair and impartial policing, they think absence of discrimination or absence of bias. But as Dr. King said, the absence of tension is not the presence of peace. And so I think one of the things that the Vermont model attempts to do is infuse identity. It's not just what we don't do, but how we do interact around the lines of identity. How are we preserving people's dignity and their human rights throughout our policy? And one of the things that was controversial, I remember voting for it as a member of the Fair and Impartial Policing Subcommittee, was the inclusion of our directives related to how we cooperate and interact with immigration services. And I think that that's one of the things that puts Vermont ahead in that regard, is that we tried to do more than the bare minimum.
Can everyone hear me okay? I want to echo a little bit of what Tabitha just said. I also think it's important to understand how unique Vermont is and how unique Vermont law enforcement is. We have state police, we have municipalities, constables, towns, and we all work really close together. And I think it's important to understand that one thing about Vermont police in general is that they hold each other accountable because of their outlook and perspective around fair and impartial policing, the policy, and also what it means to be, and expand that into different identities like Tabitha was just talking about. So I think one of the reasons that we're a national leader is because we walk the walk, the talk, right? We doing and acting in what we're saying we're going to do. And I think that's important. I think it buys buy-in from the public. We have a great system of community policing in this state, people getting to know their neighbors. So I think being a small state and building those relationships between law enforcement communities and the different agencies that law enforcement represents is so important. And I think, the country's looking at that.
Yes, most importantly, I want to state that the Vermont State Police has been forward-thinking and they have full buy-in of this. And I think it's an important distinction that the Vermont State Police began this prior to the media, you know, prior to all the attention, and the focus on this. And we're doing a lot of cooperation with a lot of different organizations and communities. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Bruce Wilson. So
Commissioner Bruce Wilson.
thank you. Yeah, I'll just sum it up with that.
Thanks. And moving on to Nacho, I would like to hear what do you think that means?
Sí, pues primero quisiera darle como un contexto de esta ley que hemos implementado, que hemos tenido ahora, pero también cómo, de dónde surge, cómo es que, como que sale la necesidad de tener esta ley.
And so I want to talk a little bit about why we have immigration provisions in the fair and impartial policing policy. But before that, I need to explain a little bit about why it's necessary.
Sí, entonces primero quisiera celebrar que la comunidad migrante pues ganó una ley de tener una licencia para poder manejar aquí en el estado de Vermont y poder cumplir sus necesidades.
So I'm excited to be able to announce that many years ago, the migrant community in Vermont fought for and won an expansion of access to driver's licenses so that we have freedom of movement in this state.
Sí, pues las personas que se atrevían a manejar anteriormente, pues, y tenían una parada de tráfico con la policía, pues, en muchas ocasiones, pues, resultaba en detenciones con la migra porque, pues, ellos colaboraban con migración.
But what would happen then is once people got driver's licenses and they started being out on the road, they would have encounters with police and they would be pulled over. And then those encounters would result in them getting turned over to Border Patrol and ending up in immigration detention.
Sí, cuando se tiene esta campaña de que las personas podían tener una licencia para manejar, pues subió mucho más ese récord.
And as more people were on the roads, once we won the driver's license campaign, more and more people were having these experiences.
Sí, pues entonces de ahí salió la campaña de No Más Polimigra.
And so from that, we created the No Polimigra campaign, or no collaboration between police and immigration enforcement.
Pues esa fue la primera necesidad que tuvimos después de las licencias. Y entonces, gracias a esa ley, pues el día de hoy, pues se ha cerrado mucho esa colaboración entre policías y inmigración.
And so that became a priority for the community after driver's licenses went into effect in 2014. And the next thing we worked on was the No Polimigra campaign. And we've been successful in that. And because of all the work over the past decade, I can say now that really we have changed those practices and that we're not seeing that form of collaboration between local police and immigration enforcement anymore.
Sí, y para mí, pues esta ley de No Más Polimigra, pues esa es una forma de ser una ley pues imparcial y que pues que no pueda colaborar ahora.
And so it's really important that the no polimigra, the no collaboration policies be part of the fair and impartial policing policies to prevent that type of collaboration from occurring.
All right, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. So in moving on to our next question, this is a little bit more targeted towards the people that work more closely or in law enforcement. So to Dan and to Lisa, or sorry, Sergeant Bennett, and to Ms. Ryan. How has the concept of fair and impartial policing evolved in Vermont specifically?
It's progressed, in my opinion, very well. So sorry about that. The officers that we teach and train are much more willing to participate, to engage, their willingness to understand, and then to, practice this as law enforcement officers. And there's really no comparison from when this started,
And how has the concept kind of evolved? Like you've been on the force for 15 years. What did it look like when you first came on to now?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, one of the biggest benefits from this is that we understand now that communities they need to be one. We need to be recognized ourselves. We need to see that we're the community. That's a stark contrast from 15 years ago.
Yeah. And I don't know if you want to follow that up, Lisa.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Hello? Is it? Can you hear me? Oh, okay, good. So I think alongside what Sergeant Bennett just said, I think about training. I think about how far training has come for law enforcement in the state. We're thinking about different ways to engage with people who hold different identities. So I think Tabitha is going to talk about this in a minute, but I just want to kind of link the two, what Kelly was saying in Tabitha's bio about this identity-based policing. So fair and impartial policing, we're really looking at how to not be biased, how to not look at the things that are different. But when we're talking about identity in policing, it's kind of the opposite. So I see that as some evolution of fair and impartial policing. We're actually looking at what makes something different and how can we respond to that in a culturally appropriate way so that everyone still feels safe. Because the way that I may interact with a police officer or Kelly may react with a police officer can be very different based on upbringing, experiences with police, right, and communities and what that looks like. So I think there's a lot of really great training that's happening that we're developing. We just did a neurodivergence training for law enforcement yesterday up at South Burlington Police Department, myself and my fair and impartial policing instructor. And I can't tell you how great that went. It was a small group, but officers wanted to know more. How do we interact with people who might have autism? What are some of the sensory things that we need to look out for so that they know how to better approach situations and frankly, not get themselves in trouble, right? So that's another way I want to bring it back to accountability is like, we're going to provide you with the training and what can you get out of that? And what does that look like? So to me, that's some evolution in where, fair and impartial policing has started.
So in kind of moving on from that, you kind of nicely teed up Dr. Moore here. So Dr. Moore, Tabitha, your framework of identity-based policing represents a big shift from impartiality to identity-conscious practice. So how does recognizing identity rather than claiming neutrality make policing more just? What is the distinction and why is that important?
So I think it starts with, right, fair and impartial policing was kind of the police world's foray into recognizing that identity is playing a role in interactions, and that it's the effort to reduce the disparities between different groups across identities. And so what that resulted in was training that said, don't be racist, don't be sexist, don't be homophobic, don't do that. You have biases, everybody has them, they're natural, but don't do that thing. And so what identity-based policing does is it kind of attempts to bring that temperature down a bit and parse that out, because, you know, it's that thing like, don't think about a white polar bear with blue eyes, right? What you focus on is where you're going to go. And so in order to give officers and police departments kind of a better way to recognize that identity is a thing, and that, as Lisa are going to respond and interact with officers based on those experiences. We're moving from just like fair and impartial policing often talks about procedural justice, that if we treat people with dignity, then, you know, then they will comply and things will be great. But we know that things are so much more than that. So what identity-based policing does is it breaks it down. We do want fair and impartial policing. We want to make sure that there are no disparities between the populations that exist and their experiences with our law enforcement. Identity responsive policing is the second pillar of identity-based policing. And it says there are times that officers absolutely have to take identity into context. So for example, you're responding to a missing persons report. If that person is 3 years old versus 17 years old versus 45 versus 77, if they have Alzheimer's, right, if they have a disability, all of those identities should play a role in how the officer interacts. But when we put everything under the umbrella of fair and impartial policing, that tape is running in the back of our mind that says, don't be biased. And that to me gives kind of, and you can tell me, Dan, to me, that seems like conflicting messages. And I don't want anybody to have negative experiences ever, really, but especially in these really tense moments of pain and discord and crisis. So that second pillar is the identity responsive directives that police officers are under and police agencies and departments are beholden to. And then the third component is really what Lisa is doing a great job in developing here in Vermont, and that's community policing, right? That's that idea of how do we create these proactive relationships. One of the things that Vermont State Police is bringing back now is a practice that they used to have where they would work with their community-based organizations. They would get to know people. They used to come to our NAACP meetings when Lisa and I were leading and just, be present in ways that were respectful to us, so that if we did have something that happened, if we did have a situation or we did need assistance, we had a trusted person. So when you put those together, fair and impartial policing, we want to reduce disparities. Identity responsive policing, we also want to make sure we meet people in the ways that they need to related to identity. And community policing, we have proactive actions and activities that we do and expectations so that when something goes wrong or if people need us, they have people that they trust. So that is the framework for identity-based policing that the Vermont Criminal Justice Council and the VPA have been working on. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you
Does that
so
make
much.
sense, everybody?
And I'm very excited that you're doing this work. I think it completely makes sense once you listen to your explanation. So thank you so much, Dr. Moore. Turning to Nacho, what are the gaps between the written policy and what happens on the ground that you've seen in police community interactions?
Pues hemos estado luchando para que esta política de no más polimigra pues permanezca con fuerza, porque pues realmente la comunidad pues se ha sentido muy acosada también por la policía cuando se empezó a hacer esto de la colaboración con la migra, y pues buscaban demasiados pretextos como: oh, es que él no sabe hablar inglés y llamé a una persona para que me traduzca, y la persona que vino es agente de inmigración porque ellos hablan español y inglés, y ya de ahí pues ya no es mi problema lo que haya pasado. Entonces había mucho pretexto como este.
So there's been a really long history of the community having to fight to put into practice these immigration provisions in the fair and impartial policing policy, and it hasn't been easy. And since we've started working on this, we've seen many instances where police agencies are not following the guidelines. And there would always be a reason, right? There would always be a pretext, and an officer who turned somebody over to Border Patrol would say, "Oh, well, I was calling because I needed help translating, and Border Patrol was the only one who spoke Spanish, so that's why they were there. It wasn't anything else." But at the end of the day, the result was that the person was being detained by immigration authorities. So there would be these pretexts that would be put in place to try to avoid compliance with the policy.
Sí, cuando los compañeros empezaron a tener licencia, también los patrones empezaron a darle vehículos para que manejaran del rancho a la casa, que regularmente es como una milla o media milla, que es lo que manejan siempre en carreteras rurales, donde están los ranchos. Y también pasó algo como que el trabajador tenía miedo de la policía cuando tenía como una luz detrás de él, y pues él manejó también hasta su casa, y hubo también esa colaboración que la policía llamó a migración porque ellos decían como, oh, es que lo que pasa es que yo tenía miedo por mi seguridad y por eso llamé refuerzos, pero los refuerzos que vinieron milagrosamente fue la patrulla fronteriza que estaba aquí.
And then there were other instances, right? It's a pretty common practice that when you're working on a farm, if your housing is a little bit of a distance from the barn where you're working, you're going to use the farm vehicle to go between your house and the barn. And there was an instance where a couple workers were driving home at the end of the night, and they saw the police put on the lights behind them, and they kept driving until they got into their parking into their driveway of the house. And so in that instance, the officers used that as the pretext, and they said, "Oh, because the car didn't stop immediately, I feared for my safety, and so I had to call for backup." And lo and behold, what was the backup that showed up? Oh, it was Border Patrol. And they came and took away the workers. So that's another instance of the sort of pretext that we would see.
Sí, aunque la ley ya existía de no más polimigra, pues había muchos huecos que todavía la policía podía estar usando para colaborar con con migración. Entonces, eso era un reto para nosotros de cómo tratar de que la gente recibiera una capacitación de qué hacer en cualquier distintos casos que ellos se sentían inseguros, o por traducción o por alguna otra cosa, que ya no pudieran llamar a migración por esos tipos de cosas.
And this was all happening when the fair and impartial policing policy was already in place. But the problem was that it was riddled with these loopholes that officers were exploiting as pretexts in order to continue collaborating with immigration. So we had to work really hard and carefully to get the message across that you shouldn't be using these things like language or safety as reasons or as pretext to involve immigration enforcement.
Sí, esta colaboración que teníamos antes se está viendo en muchos otros estados ahora, y es la forma igual de los agentes de inmigración de arrestar a más comunidad migrante. Entonces, hasta el día de hoy, pues ha disminuido demasiado esa colaboración que tenía la policía antes con inmigración aquí en el estado de Vermont.
But I mean, I'm happy to say that, and this goes to the previous question or the first question as well, that really things are different in Vermont. If you look around the country right now, you see many states where there's so much collaboration between police and immigration enforcement, and that's driving detentions. But in Vermont, that really is not the case currently. We do have the policy in place that's being complied with, and we aren't seeing that collaboration happening.
Sí.
Thank you. So in my understanding is that we have a lot of questions that are popping up in the chat. So I think I'm gonna try to hurry us along a tiny bit. So, talking about training, so, this is for the three of you, Dan, Lisa, Tabitha. How does a person talk about bias and identity with officers in a way that keeps officers engaged and not defensive? So what works and what doesn't work?
Yeah, and I want to clarify too, we train all law enforcement, not just troopers. What works for me is ensuring that the recruits or the officers feel like they can speak freely. Whatever idea is in their head, I need it to come out so that we can hash it out. I want to understand why they think that, how they came to think that. I feel like that has been pretty productive for me, and I feel like we've been having success.
Yeah, and you need people to speak up and to speak their mind before you can assess the mind and whether, you know, there's some bias there, right? So so having that open conversation, is that what seems to be helping officers get trained?
Yeah, exactly. We try to stay away from pointing fingers, telling people they're wrong even when they are, because I want them to tell us what's in their head. So,
And moving on to Lisa.
Yeah, I think I want to bring it back to training and also like framework and how you kind of position about what you're going to say about the training. So like Tabitha was saying, you can't go into a room for law enforcement and do bias training or anti-bias training, and, you know, say things that to them might be seen as, oh, you're just calling me a racist, right? That's not the floor that we set, that it doesn't work. That's not the groundwork. So I think it is about how you approach the topics really specifically and really clear so that people want to engage. They want to actually say what's on their mind. You know, like Tabitha said, everybody has bias, but I think how we approach training and dialogue is so important, between law enforcement, but also between law enforcement and communities. And then I'll let you go, and I'll come back to me because I have something else I want to say.
Okay.
I want.
So what I'd start by saying is I can't control whether or not somebody gets defensive. And if I'm going to be pushing into really intimate parts of your being and your life and your ways of knowing, there's a good chance I'm going to step on some parts that hurt. So I need to be humble and ready to accept that, and ready that, you know, I'm talking to another human being. I think the second piece is to normalize talking about identity and what we've learned about identity, the same way we learn about, you know, about any other subject or any other part of human development. And that it's by normalizing those conversations outside of the training room and outside of the supervision context, that people can then recognize that, okay, you know, like I made a mistake, I did a thing, oops, that's my bias, oops, I did it again. We used to do that training. You know, so there's a way in which I think we need to get used to the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable. It's like putting on a wet bathing suit. If you've ever done that, it's not fun. And so, I think Lisa's right. I think about how you want to be approached about something that is sensitive to you. Think about how you want to be spoken to. And even if you're feeling that desperation that comes with many of us who are fighting for identity-based justice, even when you have that level of desperation, you have to maintain the humanity that you are trying to get the person. You have to model what you're expecting.
Are these negotiable requirements though, Lisa, or part of the, so, and, you know, the question was essentially when, if someone gets offensive, uh, you know, these are all things that law enforcement have to learn. So whether they're defensive, uncomfortable, they don't want to talk about it, they got it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that like our FIT policy that, you know, Nacho was talking about and where we are today with it, it has come a long way, and officers frankly don't have a choice to whether they follow the things that are written within that policy. By law, they have to. It's mandated. So I want to bring it back to accountability and responsibility all the time. If somebody doesn't follow that policy, there are procedures and protocols in place where things get reviewed. They are looked at by the Vermont Criminal Justice Council, depending on what level it gets to hold folks accountable. So also another important thing to note is with that policy, when it was created, we have a 24-person council, Vermont Criminal Justice Council members. Every single person voted in favor of that policy. And that policy has been something that's been worked on for years by dedicated, smart, committed folks. And I'm so proud of it. I can't really take any credit because I wasn't very much involved in it, because I wasn't in this role, but it's something that we're really proud of, and officers are actually required to follow it.
All right, so this is a kind of a question for anybody that feels comfortable answering this. So when we reconvene this panel in 5 years, what are the success stories going to be? What do you hope has changed by then?
I guess if in 5 years we come back here, it would be nice to see maybe some of the people involved in these organizations related to these topics and the advocates putting their names in our resumes become state troopers. That'd be a pretty good success.
I think that was an advertisement.
It was.
I heard he's a recruiter.
Shameless. Do you want to go, Lisa, or not? What I would say is that 5 years from now, I want people to be able to talk about identity and the places where we make mistakes and the ways that we're able to restoratively respond when things are happening. I want to see, if we're talking about statistics, I want to see those disparities decreasing. And I want more people in the seats. Well, we have people online too, right?
Yeah,
I guess what I would want to see 5 years from now is that we have people from other states coming to learn about what we're doing here.
So I want to see this this summit full, right? I know it's the first night, it's a Friday night, but
Friday
full of community-based organizations and advocates and law enforcement sitting together, having these conversations, building community.
I'm adding that to mine too.
That's what I
What
want to
she
see.
said.
Pues yo pienso que en 5 años yo digo bueno, que la policía no colabore por ningún motivo con inmigración y que también mi comunidad recupere la confianza en la policía porque sé que juntos podemos lograr grandes cosas.
In 5 years, I want to see a world where police aren't collaborating with immigration for any reason, and that my community can have trust in the police.
So, and this is going to be the last question for the panel because we have a lot of questions in the chat, I guess. So, and this is for everybody. So each of you work in a different layer of the system. We got policy, training, community, and enforcement. So if you could change just one thing tomorrow that you think would make the biggest difference, what would it be and what would it take to make that happen?
That's you, Nacho.
Yo digo que no seamos juzgados por nuestro perfil racial, que creo que todos somos humanos y todos tenemos derechos.
I think that we shouldn't be racially profiled because we're all human beings and we all have the same rights.
Dan?
My biggest, sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
what do you think would make the biggest difference and what would it be and what would it take to make that happen? One thing that if you could change tomorrow, you would.
Well, the one thing I really want is I'm hoping more people will reach out to me. We can't get better if we don't know what the issues and complaints are about the state police. And we want to get better. We want to serve our communities better. So that would be the biggest thing that I could have help us.
And his email is daniel.f.bennett
Yeah.
at vermont.gov. Email him.
That's a really hard question.
Yeah, that's why I make the big bucks.
I think we do this really well, but I do think there could be greater transparency between, like, again, communities, organizations, law enforcement about people's experience with law enforcement and law enforcement's experiences with community. I think often we see it's, law enforcement in a light that's like what they're doing wrong, but there's got to be some accountability on communities too. And so I'd really like to see a better system and a better approach to cooperation going both ways, law enforcement, community, community, law enforcement, and hold kind of each other mutually accountable and be respected by one another even more.
I think in order to reach the future that Nacho imagines, we need to put, and I'm speaking to the legislature and I'm speaking to the grant holders and whomever else, we have to put the adequate resources in place in order to make these things happen. I noticed that from all sides, from community side, from law enforcement side, everybody wants this future to happen, but we don't have the time. We don't have the money. The academy isn't long enough. We don't have opportunities to connect. Our state is too big. Our state is too small. So put the resources in and that future will happen.
Great answers, all of you. So moving along, my understanding is there's a number of people that have questions for the panel. Are we gonna go with the chat first or with the? Okay.
Do you want mine? It's cold. Winter just dropped.
Thank you. Okay, we have a number of questions in the chat. Maybe what we can do is alternate between chat and room. I am going to try to get that mic working so I can bring it to folks. But to start with a question in the Q&A, this is a question specifically about the role of the fair and impartial policing policy in limiting contact between police and federal immigration authorities. And the question is, as allies and community members, what specific proactive steps can we take to ensure our local law enforcement agencies are not just following these policies, but are actively acting as a shield against illegal federal actions rather than a conduit for them?
The best thing to do would be to contact your chief and not just to contact them, but see if you can set up a meeting. That way you can get a real understanding and a vibe of how that police department is operating.
El jefe de policía de cada parte. ¿Tienes respuesta a esto? No. ¿Cómo animar a la policía? No solamente no colaborar, sino proteger la comunidad de la migra.
Sí, pues pienso que deberíamos ser igual consciente de lo que estamos haciendo, que somos una comunidad. Sí, somos una comunidad que ha estado aquí por mucho tiempo y ha estado, pues, desde abajo, desde luchando, trabajando, y que solo estamos aquí para un mejor futuro.
I mean, I think it just starts with an understanding. It starts with an understanding that our community is part of the state, that we've been here for a long time, that we have oftentimes gone unnoticed, but that we are here and fighting for a better life. Test.
Are we good? We're good. Thank you. Okay, taking a question from the room.
Thank you. Reverend Hughes, Executive Director of Vermont Racial Justice Alliance. Great work, y'all. Somebody should clap for these folks again. This is the first time that I've had the opportunity to hang out with the FIPP folks in quite some time. We were in the room when the policy was being drafted, FIPP in 2015. Jen Morrison was in the room. Will Lambic was in the room. Abel was in the room. So definitely having a lot of interaction, interplay on that. So yeah, it's good to hear. The other thing too is I just would, before I go to the main point, is just clarify that the whole concept of fair and impartial policing born from the Uncommon Alliance in Burlington, Winooski, South Burlington, and I think it was UVM. I think that was in Pete Sherling was the commissioner, right? When they started voluntarily collecting data, and this is all Title 20, 2366 stuff. fair and impartial policing, as well as race data collection. All that came out of the Burlington area. And not to like lay a claim to it, but it's about constitutional policing. So I just want to lay clarity to, because I know and I love my migrant justice brothers and sisters. And what, this aspect of it is very important. But anybody that's not a white cis male is really what this is all about, this policing, because that's where the disparities exist, not just the immigration community. So I just want to make that really clear because there's a lot of work that we need to do on constitutional policing that goes way beyond what we're talking about here with our brothers, our beloved brothers and sisters who are from the migrant community. So I just want to make that very clear because we still got driving while black and we got driving while gay and we got driving while all this other stuff. And the policy does pertain to it. It's very, very clear. Okay, so I just want to put that out there. The other thing is when we're dealing with the migrant community, and we're talking about our concern about, I'm just going to say ICE. There's an executive order called 14288. And what it does is it provides for, by executive mandate, an influx of military equipment into all 18,000 law enforcement agencies across the United States. And in its section 6, it refers to the Homeland Security Task Force, which is here, and in every other state. And I'm just trying to paint a picture for you. This is very, very important that we understand this. Within that task force are all federal law enforcement agencies. So that means the ATF, the FBI, the DEA, the US Marshals, as well as ICE. And they're all in the same office here. So one of the things that I hope that we can do, and I stopped paying attention to the FIPP for a while back because we went on to create the Office of Racial Equity. We went on to abolish slavery, went on to REIB, we went on to a lot of other things. And I don't have the capacity to be at all of the meetings, but I respect the work that y'all are doing. But there's a challenge that we have here because, Will, there's nothing to preclude folks who are in that office from somehow or another interacting with any one of our agencies in the state and then colluding with the ICE folks, if you know what I mean. So all I'm getting at is that there's a whole nother, we're playing checkers and they're playing chess, is what I'm trying to say.
Reverend, do you have a question, Reverend? For the panel?
Yes, I'm getting to that. So the question is can you, the FIPP folks, can you please circle back around with Jen and the administration and make sure that there are clear protocols on if and when and how military equipment, transparent protocols, how that is accepted from federal agencies, first of all. And the second question is can you also make sure that there are clear and transparent protocols in place for collaboration and communication with not ICE and the FIPP, but the Homeland Security Task Force?
So
okay.
Yeah, I think
Can you please do that?
Yeah, I think what I heard there, Sergeant Bennett, was an agenda item for our January Fair and Impartial Policing Committee.
We have more questions from the attendees.
We do. I'll ask a question from the Q&A. How are the Vermont police addressing recent use of force and apparent mental health crises? The homicide of Scott Garvey in July, the shooting of Aaron Laux in September, and the altercation that led to the death of Aaron LaRoche. What do you do when previous training and policy around different identities, specifically with regard to mental health, is not working?
We are just one piece in this, and there's a lot of things that the state needs to address to help people who are in mental health crisis. Yeah, we cannot be the end all be all, obviously. So I hope that people start pushing for more assistance to these people.
What kind of assistance would you recommend?
Longer treatment, and I know that is a huge thing to tackle with insurance and funding, but we need longer care for people. These quick turnarounds are simply not enough. It's not adequate for people who are struggling and suffering.
Can I add to that, Sergeant? The reason the police end up getting called a lot is because we don't have 24/7 service agencies. We do not have enough services to support the mental health needs of Vermont, period. And if we don't want to have law enforcement involved or as involved, we have to be willing to invest, which means that we need our police officers going to the legislature and advocating for better mental health, more dollars. And I know we already spend a lot, but we have, right, we have our housing issues. There's so many different things that are feeding into these crises people are having. So we need law enforcement to be advocating for those too, but we need not just the community groups, but anybody who says they're worried about these things. We all need to be telling the legislature that we have to fund these things, period. If we don't want law enforcement to be the ones responding, we have to have better services 24/7.
Kate, can I just add one thing? I really like what Sergeant Bennett said, and it reminds me of kind of having wraparound support for individuals, any individual really who is going through any type of crisis. So not just having, police and mental health folks, but people who are from advocacy agencies that can support the individual who's going through this crisis. Because I agree with Sergeant Bennett. It is not just the responsibility of the police, it's the responsibility of the community to take care of each other as well.
Yeah, I'm going to pass it to Robin, but I just want to do a quick plug based on a topic that came up in this conversation. We have a panel on Sunday about detention of folks with mental health crisis. And Lindsay St. Amour is presenting on that, and I would encourage folks to attend to take up that issue as well.
Yeah, hi. I actually have kind of a little bit more of a follow-up question to that conversation, and I appreciate what everyone said about the mental health system needing to provide more support. I have a daughter who has a very serious mental health issue, so I know very well what both public safety and how mental health responds. And what I can say is that when you call on your designated agency to help you when your child is in a crisis, if they are remotely escalated, they will not come to you. And it is heartbreaking because it's very difficult to manage. And so what they advise you to do is to call the police, but you know that the police do not have the training in de-escalation. And so you're bouncing around, and there have been situations where I have literally been on the phone back and forth in the middle of a crisis while someone else in my family is being assaulted and trying to manage that and nobody coming to my home. And part of the work that I did when I lived in Burlington was to try to get a mental health alternative that was based off of Eugene, Oregon's CAHOOTS program. And the thing that really struck me in that work was that there were 30 hours of training alone in de-escalation, just de-escalation for the folks who responded to mental health crisis. And this did include some public safety officers, but also it included an EMT as well as folks who were clinicians. 30 hours of de-escalation training and then field training. And part of what surprised me is when I kind of held that up against what our academy does, as well as our designated agency, it just seems like there's not enough attention paid to de-escalation. I think understanding identity, and it was great to hear about the neurodivergent training, but I'm curious about what the North Star is for police officers to be trained Made the statement earlier about investing in the training of officers. And I want to know what that vision is. I want to know how you want to scale up, what it takes to get there. And then the second piece is, I'm very interested in how public safety and mental health are working together, because the only thing that I see is they are not working together really at all. And it's very, very difficult for families.
So the question being, what is, I believe you said, what is the North Star for de-escalation training when it comes to folks that are in a mental health crisis? Is that okay?
Yeah, we are doing more de-escalation, more than we've ever done. But again, this is a difficult topic. I mean, this is stuff that's at a doctorate level, right? So my concern is, how could it be enough? I feel like you need a long education in order to fully understand and appreciate the complications of mental health. But I agree. De-escalation is good, but I would like to see that fewer incidents get to the point where we are there and having to de-escalate. And we do have, at each barracks, we now have a mental health clinician. I'm sorry, I forgot the title, but they come out with us, and it has been a big asset.
I think the Eugene, Oregon, the Kahoot program is a great one. I think that would be a really great place for us to be able to start. And de-escalation is only one component, right? That's the in the moment thing. And we can look 6 ways to Sunday at any situation and think of all the things that we could have done different. That doesn't excuse what happens in a situation, and it certainly doesn't make you feel better as a parent with whatever outcome happens to your child. Oh, yeah.
So, and I just want to ask everybody, Dr. Moore Tabitha has to leave us, but thank you very much for being present with us today. I really appreciate your expertise on this panel. So we just give her a little mini round of applause.
And I'll take another question from the Q&A. We have what? It's 5:18, Kelly. We supposed to go to 5:20?
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
And I want to say too that just because a question seems more pertinent to one panelist than the other, everybody is welcome to weigh in. Even if it's not your area, you can have vision of what you'd like to see happen. This question says, how are the Vermont State Police going to adhere to the understanding embodied in fair and impartial policing when Governor Scott has ordered that the Vermont State Police assist in the criminalization of the unhoused and substance-dependent members of our communities? Does the question make sense, Kelly? You scowled.
Yeah, I got confused.
Yeah, so the question is about an order from Governor Scott, which I'm not familiar with, that the state police assist in arresting and criminalizing unhoused and substance-dependent Vermonters. And so I think the questioner is calling out a contradiction in terms there. How does fair and impartial policing play out when it comes to police interaction with unhoused and substance-dependent folks?
I don't know if our way of operating is going to change, right? The whole point of being fair and impartial is that we're not going to mistreat people, whether they have a home or they don't have a home or they have drug addiction. So I don't believe that our troopers are going out there and mistreating those folks.
So, is the question getting at when we're talking about Governor Scott ordering things, is this in reference to Burlington and
Yeah.
state police being
Yeah.
more involved in Burlington?
Yeah.
I don't know. Does that help with any answers?
Right. So from my understanding, we are there as a presence because there have been some issues. And again, police are part of that. And we're trying to do our best so that we can have a balance, right? Some crime does need to be addressed and other things the community needs to take care of. I hope that's what we're doing in Burlington, and I'm pretty sure that's what our motive is. Let me know otherwise, though.
One more thing that came up in the chat. I know that we mentioned Scott Garvey earlier, and somebody very helpfully said that the Garveys are presenting Scott's story at tomorrow morning's Truth and Reconciliation Commission meeting tomorrow morning in St. Johnsbury and on live stream. So that link, if folks are interested in tuning in there and honoring their story, is in the Q&A for this panel.
Thanks, Kate. Yeah. Do we have,
We have like 2 minutes if you want to do closing thoughts or, what visions folks have for the upcoming legislative session.
Yeah, I guess I'll turn Nacho. Unfortunately, we haven't interrogated you too much lately. Do you have anything that you think is that we should that the attendees need to know to wrap things up here on this panel?
Sí, pues realmente no sé mucho qué decir en esta ocasión, pero pues primero pues doy gracias que nos escucharon y pues segundo pues que sigamos muy de cerca el proyecto de ley porque pues aunque hemos trabajado por 10 años en No Más Polimigra, pues se necesita mucho más todavía.
Yeah, I feel like I don't have a lot more to add right now, but just that we continue paying attention and then next legislative session, we've worked hard and for over a decade on the No Polimigra campaign, but there's still more work to be done. So let's not give up.
And any closing thoughts from you, Dan or Lisa?
Please reach out to me. We're really trying to get out there and connect with as many people as we can. So I would love to have some help or suggestions.
Yeah, and during our practice session for the panel, Sergeant Bennett shared that the state police really do want to partner with various community organizations, but they're the police. They're a little bit intimidating, so people don't necessarily want to reach out. So this is your time now. He's not just a faceless uniform. He actually cares about the community, and he's trying to make some inroads with the state police. So reach out to him. I just want to say thank you to our panel today. And finally ask Elisa, sorry.
I was like, wait, I want to say something.
Sorry, go ahead.
I want to remind folks, with respect, that there are multiple agencies, law enforcement agencies, that also are not Vermont State Police. We work together, but I just don't want to make it seem like all of this is talking about Vermont State Police. We're talking about law enforcement in Vermont in general. At least I am in my work and working for the Vermont Police Academy, which certifies and trains all law enforcement, regardless if you're state, municipal, town, constable. So Dan and I work really closely together. We are represented by two different agencies. I'm under the Agency of Administration for the state. He's DPS, but we do work together very closely. So I just want people to know that there's more than just Vermont State Police. I also want to recognize that this work is hard and there is a balance. And with law enforcement, and I can't speak for law enforcement because I'm not law enforcement, although I say I'm law enforcement adjacent, that while we should hold them accountable, we should also support them. And I think the same goes for our communities. We hold our community members accountable all the time, and we should support them as well. So I really see this opportunity for doing this work in community, across agencies, across departments, being a real strength of Vermont and what we have here and how our law enforcement works with everybody else.
Okay, now you can all clap. I'm sorry, Elise, I didn't mean to cut off your. So thank you to all of our panelists here. This is our very first summit. So obviously we really appreciate you coming. And I think it was a great event. So we're going to have a networking event after this. So we're going to be at the campus center for a networking event, so we can kind of continue the conversation there if folks want to. I'm not. But thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it.